Hello, welcome to the Connected Table Live. I'm your host, Melanie Young, with my cohort, David Ransom, for another delicious afternoon discussing what's going on and what's about to eat and drink in the world of food and beverage. David and I are in New York this week because it's the feeding season. Lots of events taking place and good food, and of course Thanksgiving coming up. So our focus is going to be on eating and drinking for the holidays. And we are very excited to have a little bit of eating and a little bit of drinking. Hey, David, what do you like for Thanksgiving, the mains or the sides?
Well, I'm all about the sides. Isn't that what Thanksgiving is all about every year, is the sides and what we're drinking?
Well, I'm the veggie head in the family, so for me, sides are main course every day of the year. And I have to tell you, one of the best books we've tried this year is The Big Book of Sides by our first guest, Rick Rodgers. This book, which is from Ballantine, it's a new release, has over 450 side dishes to try. And we've been having sides as our main course for the last 2 weeks, actually. It is chock full of wonderful recipes like deviled eggs with horseradish and bacon, lemon sweet potatoes with meringue topping, buttermilk cloverleaf rolls, and we just had one that was just chickpeas and kale and super veggies that I could eat every day of my life. So our first guest, a little bit about him. He is a prolific cookbook author and educator, prolific underscore. He often works on the sidelines, or rather behind the scenes, as a recipe taster, consultant, or co-author for other books. For example, Corporate Cookbooks for Williams Sonoma, Kingsford Charcoal, and Sur La Table. Did I say that? Sur La Table. Sorry. He received an IACP Cookbook Award for the Chelsea Market Cookbook, and his articles have appeared in many magazines, including Men's Health, Food and Wine, Fine Cooking, and Bon Appetit magazine, which gave him a Food and Entertaining Award as Outstanding Cooking Teacher. But this book, The Big Book of Sides, he's the main deal. So welcome, Rick Rodgers.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
We're great, Rick. Welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on a week before Thanksgiving. It's got to be a busy time for you.
Yeah, I'm actually in Chapel Hill, where I'm going to be teaching a cooking class tonight for about 50 people to make them Thanksgiving dinner and all the sides. So I probably will make Thanksgiving dinner about 10 times before I have my own Thanksgiving dinner.
So, and then you'll be like, listen, what do you eat for Thanksgiving, by the way? What is your official meal?
People expect me to say I make reservations for Thanksgiving. But,
right, exactly.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, but I have to have the traditional meal. And every time that I try to get away from a grandma recipe, I get my hand slapped. So I think that the trick is to serve people a big, huge, heaping dish of nostalgia. But if you want to do a twist, you know what I really like to do is sometimes I'll make two side dishes of the same thing. For example, I'll make a regular stuffing, but I have a cousin who likes oyster stuffing. It's no big deal to put some oysters in half of that stuffing. So now I have two.
No, and it's got
some wild mushrooms, something like that.
Well, we love the versatility in your book. It's your dishes. I mean, first of all, you give a great little story about the dishes, and you have wonderful, obviously as a cooking teacher, wonderful guidance and prepping and methodology, which is really helpful for particularly me, since I'm a born again nouveau cook. David's a traditional old time cook, and I'm newer in the kitchen. But we've actually enjoyed cooking together as a result of your wonderful book. It covers vegetables, grains, salads, breads, sauces, and more. Why don't you, give us some of the highlights. What are some of the most popular and your favorite recipes in the book?
Well, the main thing about this book is that even though I want to be sure that we talk to people about, how to think about the holiday that's coming up, how you're going to get all those 900 side dishes on the table all at once. This is a book for everyday cooking. I say this over and over again. You give me an hour to make something special for a holiday, I can make a killer diller, sweet potatoes, lemon sweet potatoes with a meringue topping. Okay. But this book is also for when it's a Tuesday night, you're running home from work, and you look in the refrigerator and all you have is a pound of carrots. So to me, that's more of a challenge. Like, what do I do with the pound of carrots?
And what would you do
So,
with a pound of carrots? Because that is what we have in our refrigerator a
well,
lot.
well, one of the things that I really like is really good carrot vichy. And the carrot vichy is that we sometimes would call that glazed carrots. And what you do is you just take the carrots, put them in your skillet. Now, in Vichy, for Vichy, France, they have sparkling water. So you cover your carrots with sparkling water. I'm here to tell you, plain water works just as well.
Exactly.
And
just in case you
butter,
don't have a bottle of Vichy water sitting around.
just in case you don't have a bottle of Vichy water, and a knob of butter and a sprinkle of sugar, and then you cook it slowly so that the liquid evaporates and cooks the carrots at the same time, and then you end up with this nice buttery sweet glaze. This is a classic recipe, but people forget about it.
Well, it sounds great.
Yeah, you don't need to put chipotle on it. Is what I'm saying.
Although you could.
But you darn tootin', you could if you wanted to. But one of the things that I realized with the book that I see that's a trend lately, and Melanie, you and I have been in the food business together in New York for a long time, and we've seen this. Guess what, folks? Anything tastes good if you put bacon on it.
Well, that is certainly true. You know, Melanie said deviled eggs with horseradish and bacon, and the first thought that came to my mind was, oh, wait, bacon. I'll eat that.
And I'm that way with lemon because, again, I don't eat bacon anymore because I'm more healthy cooking now. But I put lemon on everything, and I have a thing for spice. Like, I just can't get enough spicy red pepper flakes on everything now, or sriracha.
Yeah, I mean, sriracha is an interesting ingredient because it's got its fermentation, and so and I'm all for secret ingredients. And you remind me of something that I want to be sure to say, which is that one of my biggest secret ingredients is to cook out of my liquor cabinet, and because a splash of bourbon, and like I love Four Roses bourbon because it's moderately priced and it's perfect for the holidays, American holiday, American bourbon, Thanksgiving, is that little bit of alcohol really fixes the flavors of the other ingredients in the dish. So there's a reason why so many recipes, so many cultures are based with wine, beer, and a splash of spirits. So keep that in mind when you're doing your cooking if you need that little bit of something extra.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up the gravy so quickly in our conversation. I was actually reading through your book and actually on your website as well, and you have what you call your ultimate gravy recipe, which includes a little bit of Four Roses bourbon. And what was interesting to me was that you like to use Four Roses, because it's not only affordable, but it's also delicious, but it's also the only bourbon that certifies on the label that it uses non-GMO corn in its mash, and no other bourbon out of Kentucky does that. I want to ask you this question as we're talking about that. How important to you is the concept of sustainability and where the ingredients come from and how it's grown? Because you could have used any bourbon in that because you're cooking it off, yet you chose Four Roses for the fact that it goes that extra mile and uses.
That reason, but also because of the affordability and the fact that it's a reliable product all the way around. I mean, I use the yellow label when I cook, but for a sipping bourbon, there's also a small batch bourbon, and there's also their single barrel. But as far as your question about sustainability, it is very important to me, but that's something that I have to leave to the person who's reading the book. I mean, that person can choose to make that choice themselves.
Right.
And what I'm finding, however, is that doesn't really make any difference because so many people are making the choice towards sustainable non-GMO products.
Well, I have a question for you. Let's say I live, because obviously this book is nationally available. Let's say I live somewhere where I don't have access to wonderful supermarkets and farmers markets, and I have to resort to frozen vegetables and things. What would you do if I had to go that way?
Well, you see, there's all sorts of things that you can do, just like you said, with your spices. Now, first of all, I know what you're saying, but I often find that people do not go outside of their comfort zone. There are farmers markets. Is good produce available. I would encourage people to experiment a little bit. I never cooked with kohlrabi, for example, on a daily basis until I started testing with this book. Now it's one of my favorite recipes.
Yeah,
one of my favorite ingredients. You see, and I just want to say I always have frozen vegetables in my freezer, but I have peas, I have corn, and I have lima beans. Because if I'm making something as simple as rice, and I go, I don't know, this rice looks a little plain. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how fast you can lift it up with some defrosted peas or corn, something like that. And don't tell anybody, but there's very often that I've served lima beans in something and told people it was fava beans.
Oh, really?
They didn't know. The baby lima beans?
Well,
lima beans are really good.
Lima beans are pretty easy to get. Fava beans are almost impossible to get, especially fresh. So it's
right.
Nice to be able to do something like substitute that and not have it really affect the dish in a negative way. That's for sure.
Right.
I have a kind of a question for you. Your book is it's very detailed, and I have a little anecdote. When I was first starting out in the restaurant business before I got into radio and journalism, et cetera, I actually worked in a Swiss restaurant. And the chefs were both from Switzerland. Yeah. And they made the most incredible rosti potatoes that actually I've ever had. So I was going through your book the other day, and I came across your rosti recipe. Now, in all that time that I worked at that restaurant, and it wasn't a long time, but I did work there for a little while, I never knew that in order to make really good rosti, you have to cook the potatoes, but then also chill them down afterwards. And so there's a lot of testing that you must have had to go through to kind of figure that out, because that's not something that somebody would normally think about when they're thinking about making rosti potatoes, which are basically grated potatoes that are then cooked in a skillet. Usually with
like a big old potato pancake.
With a big old potato pancake.
It's basically a latke.
Like a monstrous hash brown. But, there's obviously a lot of testing that goes into making something like that happen. How long do you work on a recipe like that, or any recipe really, before you get it right? Is there a lot of trial and error? Does it sometimes click right away? Does it sometimes take a long time? Give us a little bit of insight as to what goes on in the test kitchen.
I have a few different directions to go with that. First of all, the way how I knew about the cold potatoes was because my grandmother is from Liechtenstein, next door to Switzerland. So there's not many of us around.
I don't know many Liechtensteiners, really. Wow.
Right. So, yeah. And my grandfather, her husband, was born in Waikiki. So I'm quite a mutt. So when I'm developing recipes, plus my traveling around the world, but also traveling as a cooking teacher throughout our country, I am a sponge, and I just love being influenced by whatever comes my way. Now, there is also something to be said for being a trained professional. I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just saying the truth. If you're a chef, my feeling is that if you know where you want to end up with the recipe, you can get it on test number 1 or test number 2. If you really know what the heck you're doing, there shouldn't be this, oh my goodness, I need to go back for another 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg.
Right.
So that is why I have the luxury, you might say, of writing detailed recipes, because I have the bare bones. Now I need to teach you more than just grate the potatoes into the bowl. So, and I've learned this over the many years that I've been writing cookbooks. And what I love about working with other people, which is another part of my job, is again, it's part of that being a sponge aspect. I mean, last year I worked with both Frankie Avalon, the star of the 60s beach blanket movie,
sure,
on a book of Italian recipes with him, And I also worked with Tommy Bahama, who was a fictional person.
Right.
A fictional person, like Betty Crocker.
He's got great shirts, though.
Yeah.
Exactly. And in my size. So I worked with them on a Hawaiian cookbook.
Uh-huh.
I just love being that chameleon, and I think that that's expressed in this book. I know that's what I'm getting from you guys, that you saw that international.
Well, we
very much so.
We certainly did, because there's really recipes from all over in it, and what I loved about it is that it's really an every man's cookbook,
And
and woman's cookbook for sides. It's not just about the holidays. It's not just about what do I have with turkey or what should I have with my crown roast of beef or whatever it may be at a certain time of year. There's something that you can cook from this book all year long, and there's easy recipes. There's some obviously recipes that are a little bit more involved as well, but everything's approachable, and it was really interesting to see. Obviously, that's why it's called the Big Book of Sides, but just really how comprehensive and how approachable it was. Really a wonderful book. Let me ask you this. When you are not cooking recipes and testing recipes and making recipes for not only your cookbooks but for other people as well, and you're just cooking at home, what's your go-to cuisine that you have when you make dinner at home?
I have to tell you, I'm just like everybody else. I have kind of a rotation, just like everybody else does. I've been cooking all day, and I've been cooking with exotic ingredients sometimes or expensive ingredients. And so I love me some comfort food. And I love a good meatloaf. I love a good turkey loaf. I love a good veggie loaf. It's something like that. Pasta. Roast chicken is still one of those things that I can make a roast chicken with my eyes closed. And the benefit of that is that I have dinner for a couple of nights.
Well, I love roast chicken, and I never had it growing up because my mother hated to cook. So any chicken we had was either fried because we were in the South or baked to death. So when Dave and I became a consciously coupled couple, he made the most divine roast chicken. And now Sundays are roast chicken nights, and I just love it. It was just eye-opening to have a great roast chicken.
Well,
go ahead.
No, I was just saying I appreciate that, Melanie. I learned it from my mom, Sally, who's probably listening right now, so that's always nice to give her a little bit of shout out. But I love making roast chicken too. And Rick, it's so easy to make. You're right. It's one of those go-to dishes that you can always kind of have in your back pocket, and it doesn't take a lot of thought.
And throw some root vegetables in the bottom of that pan and let them cook for about 45 minutes with the chicken, and you have a whole meal.
Yeah.
And because that I'm always looking to, how am I going to double up? And so cooking the chicken and the sides together in the same roasting pan is great for me.
So how do you deal with all the people now who are gathering around the table with dietary issues? I think Thanksgiving and some of these great meals are becoming complicated because people come out with like their list and say, "Oh, okay, I don't eat garlic, I don't eat onions, I don't eat gluten, I don't eat bread, I don't eat cheese." How do you enjoy the meal but also have an appealing meal for those who have issues, which sadly are more and more people?
Yeah, but what I do is I look for dishes that are on the easy side. I mean, because first of all, your palate needs to be refreshed. And one of my arguments with the typical Thanksgiving meal is that there's too much heavy food. And if you're developing a recipe where everything is rich, cream, spices, herbs, and everything, you have to see how things are going to marry together on the plate.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, like, for example, I'm somebody who is gluten intolerant. So I know that I'm making my quinoa, carrots, and mint from the book, which is an extremely easy recipe.
Actually, we'll try that.
Yeah, and sauteing some wild mushrooms, and I'm going to fold that into there to make it a little bit more special, so it's not just plain quinoa. I also like to use the rainbow quinoa, not because it tastes different, because it's so attractive. It really looks great.
Well, I think I agree with you. One of the challenges is that many people go toward the richer side with Thanksgiving, and it really needs to be a balanced meal so that you don't have that lull afterward. And it's easy to do. I remember last year I made a kale salad, and everybody was like, "Why are you making a salad for Thanksgiving?" But it ended up being like the most popular dish.
It was hugely popular. I was just about to bring that up, actually. Melanie said we have to have something that's healthy on the table as well to go with the stuffing and the pearled onions and the you name it. You name it that we had. We had it, and
it was from Bon Appetit magazine. Right. It was a Bon Appetit recipe. It was just unbelievable. Everybody's like, "Can I have more? Can I have more?" It was great.
Well, you also look for things that you can do on top of the stove.
Right.
It's two things I really need to be sure to say is that, one, when I have somebody who has serious dietary restrictions, sometimes that's when I turn it over into a potluck, and then this way I can say to that person, "Why don't you bring something that you know that you can eat?" Bada boom, bada bing.
Well, that's what I did. Wrote an article on that. And my attitude is, if you have dietary issues, rather than make everybody worry, say, "I'd like to bring a dish." I'll never forget in Atlanta, everybody's like, "Oh, we're gonna have barbecue. We're gonna have barbecue," and it was like just meat. And I said, "I have a grand idea. I'll make a big salad." And at least I knew I could eat something. So that's the best way to do it, rather than have the hostess worry. Let's talk leftovers a little bit. What's a great dish to make? What are some of your favorite leftover dishes after Thanksgiving and sides?
Oh, well.
Other than turkey sandwiches.
Other than turkey sandwiches. I really love turkey in Mexican food. Like tostadas or soft tacos or the dark meat in a chili. That's really my favorite thing to do with it. Of course, the soup. But, as far as the leftover vegetables go, just remember the side dishes that the stuff really isn't going to last forever. If you're not done with it by Sunday, it's time to throw it out. So it's also one of the things that I think that everybody should put on their shopping list is that if you don't have the containers, freezer containers, pick them up on your shopping list. So you're all set to go with leftovers also for things that you want to send home with people.
Yeah.
To me, that's the hardest part of the meal. You're exhausted, you've had dessert, and everybody's leaving, and you're going, "Oh, no, I want you to go home with some turkey and some gravy."
That's right.
Then,
here's your doggy bag.
Oh, no, maybe I don't. Maybe I don't want you to.
So, Rick, where are you going to be spending? Where are you spending Thanksgiving this year? After your 20 Thanksgivings you already made.
My home in New Jersey.
Wonderful.
I live in New Jersey, in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Oh, it's nice.
And it's only going to be 5 of us.
Oh, it's small.
Oh, that's great.
That's great. I was with somebody last night who's having 30 people. I was like, 30 people? Wow, it's a lot of dishes.
Well, see, that's where I want to warn people is watch out for having too many things that you have to just pop in the oven. Because pretty soon you have a traffic jam in your oven.
Yeah.
So there have been times I've used my gas grill on the back porch as an auxiliary oven. It works fantastic. Just use it as indirect for about 350 degrees, and that's a good place to heat up, like, for example, the stuffing that you can't fit into the bird.
That's right. As long as it's not too
casserole,
as long as you can control the temperature and it's not too cold outside, right?
Oh, yes. And I do find that a gas grill is easier to deal with than the charcoal grill in that situation.
Well, that's for sure.
Yeah, we're going to have to wrap this up a little bit. I think we got our next guest on. So we want to just make sure we get in all your social. How can people find you on social and learn more about you and all your books?
I'm pretty easy to find as long as you spell my name correctly, which is Rodgers. People spell it the other way, but I'm Rodgers, and so you can friend me on Facebook. You can come to rickrodgers.com, and you can go to your favorite bookseller, whether it's digital or that nice little bookstore in the center of town, and get my books there.
Yeah, the big book of sides is $30. It's a great gift, and I highly recommend it for anyone who loves to cook and also wants to cook healthy, even though there's indulgent recipes as well. Really fabulous book, but all of your books are. And yes, we go back a long way, and I've always admired your work, and it's great to know that a cooking teacher is really behind the book, because many people just say, oh, I'm going to write a cookbook, and they don't really have the creds. So we know you do, and we just want to thank you and hope that you have a delicious holiday.
And the same to you, Melanie and David. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, Rick, and thanks so much for coming on the show. And just to let you know, we will be cooking from your book on our Thanksgiving table this year. That's for sure.
Thank you for having me. That's such a compliment. I know you're a great cook.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much.